A sign outside read, "Vacancy," though half the letters were burnt out. Just a sickly red vacancy, flickering in the humid dusk like a dying heartbeat. The motel looked like it hadn't seen guests since the 80s. Peeling paint, a skeletal Coke machine wheezing by the office, and that eerie stillness that settles in places the world forgot. Jason Miller pulled into the gravel lot in a rental sedan that smelled like stale fries and corporate regret. He wasn't planning to stop. He never was. The GPS had glitched again. He'd been driving for hours down Highway 47, trying to outrun something he couldn't name, chasing some business meeting he didn't care about. His marriage was on pause, his job dangling by a thread, and in the glove compartment was a bottle of pills he told himself he wasn't going to touch. But this place, this decaying slice of American nowhere, called to him like a whisper under his skin. The clerk was asleep behind the glass, radio mumbling static jazz. A bell was nailed to the counter, but didn't ring when he pressed it. Jason was about to leave when a gravelly voice rasped from the shadows. "You want a room?" Jason turned. An old man, hunched, with yellowed eyes and fingers like gnarled tree roots, slid a rusted key across the desk. Not a card. A key. "Room 306. Jason blinked. "Isn't this a one-story motel?" The clerk didn't answer, just smiled. Jason stood in front of room 306, key in hand, heart pounding like a distant thunderstorm. There was no second floor, no stairs, just this cracked sidewalk looping like a broken spine around the single-level structure. He circled twice before stopping again in front of the door. Because the number on the key didn't change, and neither did the room. 306. The brass numbers on the door shimmered faintly, even though the overhead bulb had died long ago. He could have walked away. He should have, but he didn't. The key slid into the lock reluctantly, like it was remembering something it didn't want to. The decor hadn't aged, it had curdled. The carpet was brown shag, wet in places, though no water ran, and the wallpaper peeled in long strips like sunburned flesh. A single bed stood in the middle, neatly made, too neatly, with sheets that looked ironed but hadn't been touched by human hands in decades. Jason stepped in, closed the door behind him. The whispering began immediately. Not voices, not at first, just a pressure, like thoughts that weren't his, leaking from the walls. "And then, you told her you'd quit drinking. You lied." Jason froze. "Who said that?" Silence, but only for a second. "That night in Phoenix, you weren't asleep. You watched her walk out the door. The room was dark, yet he could see clearly. Shadows formed familiar shapes. His office, his wife's face twisted in grief. A pill bottle tumbling out of a desk drawer. "Enough," he whispered, rubbing his temples. "This is just stress. Highway hypnosis. I need sleep. He lay down on the bed. The pillow was already warm, like someone had been lying there seconds before him. He closed his eyes and dreamed nothing. But the whispers didn't stop. They waited. Jason awoke in the middle of the night, or thought he did. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3:06 a.m. Of course it did. The air in the room had thickened, soured. The sheets clung to his skin like wet paper. There was no sound from the highway, no hum of crickets, not even the buzz of a fly. Just the walls, softly breathing. He sat up, eyes heavy, mouth dry. Something was wrong. The nightstand beside him had a single drawer. He hadn't opened it before. Now, it called to him. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the knob. It stuck at first, as if resisting. But when it finally gave way, the drawer slid open with a groan that sounded more like a sigh. Inside was a Polaroid photograph, yellowing at the edges. Jason picked it up. It was a picture of him, standing outside this very motel. Same jacket, same car, same crooked little smile, like he wasn't sure he belonged in the frame. But the photo looked old, a decade at least. And scribbled on the back, in shaky handwriting, "You were never supposed to remember." Jason dropped it, heart thudding now like a war drum. Behind the photo sat a room service receipt. It bore today's date, but the year was 2018. He felt bile rise in his throat. That couldn't be right. That was 7 years ago. The receipt was for one room, room 306. Guest? Jason Miller. Duration, unlimited stay. Unlimited? He stumbled to his feet, suddenly aware of how long he'd been in here. Hours? A day? 2? He opened the door. The hallway was gone. In its place stretched a long corridor, one he hadn't seen before, lined with doors, all numbered 306. Jason backed away from the hallway of identical doors, heart galloping in his chest. The door he'd come through had vanished. No knob, no hinges, just peeling, filthy wallpaper where it had once been. He stumbled into the bathroom, needing light, clarity, normalcy. The bulb above the mirror flickered to life with a reluctant buzz. He splashed water on his face, cold, metallic, almost sticky. Then he looked up. His reflection stared back at him, but something was wrong. The face in the mirror had crow's feet, gray stubble, sunken eyes, older, much older, like he'd been aging in this room without knowing it. His own voice came from the mirror. "You left her crying on the porch." Jason flinched. "What?" "The day she begged you to stay." "No," he whispered. "No, that was years ago. Time doesn't work here, not like out there. Suddenly, the mirror shifted, depth warped, and behind the reflection, a woman stood. She wasn't there a second ago. Mid-30s, raven hair soaked like she'd come out of a storm. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale, waterlogged, the color of drowned bone. Her mouth opened wide, impossibly wide, and whispered one word, "Jason." He spun around. Nothing behind him, just damp tiles and silence. He looked back. The mirror was empty. Only his reflection now, eyes wide, lips trembling. But the water was still running. Except he hadn't turned the faucet on. Dark, red. The door was back, whole, clean, almost new-looking. The brass numbers 306 gleamed, freshly polished. The whispers had quieted, but they hadn't stopped. They had simply grown patient. Jason stepped into the hallway again. It wasn't the same hallway. It shifted subtly with each step, walls stretching like elastic, lighting humming overhead in broken intervals. Somewhere far off, a child cried, or maybe laughed. The sound echoed the way memories do in dreams, distorted and wrong. The motel lobby was where he left it. Somehow, the same cracked linoleum floor, same filthy vending machine offering expired Fanta and peanut brittle. But the clerk was gone. Instead, the reception desk had a ledger lying open. Thick, leather-bound, ancient. The pages were yellow and curling at the edges. Jason stepped forward, his fingers tingling with the sense that this moment, this very page, meant something. He looked down. Names! Hundreds, maybe thousands, all written in shaky, fading handwriting. Some were crossed out. Most weren't. His eyes scanned downward, half hoping not to find his name. But there it was. Miller, Jason, room 306. Check-in, October 12, 2018. No checkout date, 7 years ago. Next to it, a scribbled note. Memory suppression advised. Subject shows signs of recurrence. He turned the page. More names, familiar names, his father's, his college roommates. A woman he knew from work who vanished one summer and never returned. They were all in here, all in room 306. Jason's breath caught in his throat. What is this place? The clerk's voice came from behind him, not as a sound, but as a vibration inside his skull. It's where the truth waits, Mr. Miller. Jason turned slowly. The clerk stood there, eyes like dried tobacco leaves, face cracked and gray. But something had changed. His shadow stretched toward Jason. Ev. Jason opened his mouth to speak, but the clerk raised a hand. You want to leave, he said gently, but to leave, you have to remember. Jason whispered, Remember what? The clerk smiled, that you never left. Jason ran, out of the lobby, down corridors that hadn't been there minutes ago, past windows that looked out into nothing, just blackness, not even night, as if the motel floated in a void. His own breath chased him. It sounded like someone else's, echoing from behind. Room 306 kept reappearing. No matter which hall he took, no matter how many doors he passed, there it was. That cursed brass number, that waiting silence. He stopped, slumped to the floor. The walls seemed to lean in. He closed his eyes, and the memories flooded in like water behind a broken dam. It was October 12th, 2018. Jason had been driving that night too, back then. Drunk, angry. His wife, Emily, had begged him not to go, said she'd had enough, said she couldn't keep watching him spiral into pills, into anger, into himself. But he didn't listen. He left her crying on the porch, slamming the door behind him like it made him right. He drove too fast, music too loud, the road slick with rain and built. There was a bend in the road, a deer, headlights, screeching tires, a tree, and then black. Not death, not quite. Something in between. Jason opened his eyes. His face was wet, not with sweat, with rain. He was standing outside room 306 again, but this time it was storming, like that night. He looked down at his hands. Blood. His own? Someone else's? He wasn't sure. The door creaked open by itself. Inside, the room looked different. Not old and decayed, but clean, lit, just like it had the night he first stayed here, back in 2018. He stepped in. Emily was sitting on the bed. She looked up at him, her eyes red, exhausted. "You don't even remember, do you?" she said. Jason's legs gave out. He knelt in front of her. "I thought I died," he whispered. "You did," she said, "just not all at once." The walls began to close again. The room changed. The whispering grew into a scream of memory. Jason remembered the hospital, remembered flatlining, the crash report, the priest, then the moment they lost him. But he hadn't noticed. He'd opened his eyes in room 306. Jason bolted out of room 306. Rain pounded the hallway now, inside the hallway. Thunder cracked above a ceiling that shouldn't have had sky behind it. Water ran down the walls in sheets, erasing wallpaper, smearing the numbers on the doors into unreadable sludge. He ran, but it didn't matter. Every turn was a loop. Every door opened to room 306. Even the windows, when he smashed one with a rusted lamp, just opened to another hallway. The motel was infinite, or maybe he was. A maze of guilt with no walls, just paths lined with every choice he refused to face. He started marking the doors with a piece of broken mirror. First an X, then a help. Then he stopped bothering, because they all stayed clean. Or worse, they wrote back. One door had scrawled across it, "You can't leave something that lives inside you." Jason screamed until his throat bled. He slumped against a vending machine, humming softly in the hallway. It offered him forgiveness, $4, oblivion, $7.13, truth, exact change only. He chose oblivion, inserted all he had. Nothing came out. Time passed, or didn't. The motel didn't offer clocks anymore, just that eternal 3:06 a.m. on the red-lit alarm clock in every room he opened. Until one door looked different. It wasn't numbered. It wasn't locked. It breathed. He pushed it open, heart thundering. Inside was a mirror maze. But every reflection showed him at a different moment in his life. The first time he hit Emily. The night he crushed a bottle of pills in his palm and told himself, "Only if I really need them." The night he left her crying on the porch, cold, alone. In one reflection, he never left. He stayed. He cried. He quit. He changed. But that wasn't this Jason. This Jason ran. He collapsed in the middle of the maze, hands covering his ears as the walls screamed his name over and over, like a funeral bell. "Jason! Jason! Jason!" Back in room 306. Of course, the sheets were still neat. The clock still read 3:06. On the pillow beside him was a new Polaroid. His face. But this time, his eyes were open and terrified. The mirror in room 306 was gone now. In its place was a doorway of light. Not warm light. White. Clinical. humming like a dying fluorescent tube, cold as morgue steel. Jason stood, trembling, the Polaroid still in his hand. He stared into the doorway, heart pounding. Beyond it, he saw a hospital room, an EKG monitor, a plastic bracelet with his name, a woman, Emily, asleep in a chair, clutching his unmoving hand. Tubes snaked from his arms. Machines kept him breathing. He was in a coma. He had been all this time. And suddenly, it all made sense. The whispers, the guilt, the broken timelines. This motel wasn't real. It was memory, regret, purgatory, a crumbling monument to every choice he couldn't take back. The clerk's voice echoed from nowhere. You built this place, nail by nail, memory by memory. Jason stepped toward the doorway, but something blocked him. A figure. Emily. But not the real one. The version he abandoned here, soaked in storm water, eyes dark with betrayal. You don't get to leave, she whispered. Not yet. Jason fell to his knees. I remember everything now. Then you know, she said. You made the choice. But I want to change. Too late. The light flickered. The hospital room began to fade. Jason ran, dove toward the door. His fingers brushed the edge, and he was back in room 306. The bed, the clock, the silence. No mirror, no light, no door. Only the Polaroid. He flipped it over. For the first time, the back was blank. Then the words faded in, like ink bleeding through. The air in room 306 had changed. Not cold, not warm, just still. Jason stood, knees shaking, sweat trailing down his spine. He reached for the doorknob, but there was no door anymore, just wallpaper. The room had sealed itself. He was alone, or so he thought. Until the chair in the corner creaked. He turned. A figure sat in the darkness. Not the clerk, not Emily, not something inhuman. Himself. Older, gaunt, bearded, hollow eyes, yellowed teeth, skin like old paper left in sunlight. Been waiting, the older Jason rasped. Jason stepped back. No, you're not real. I'm as real as the you who stormed out and never turned back. You're me? A nod. Stayed here too long, the older version said. Forgot who I was. Forgot why I came. Eventually you stop fighting. You just exist. Room 306 takes care of the rest. Jason's voice cracked. But the older Jason smiled, rotten and small. And what are you gonna do with that? Cry? Beg the motel for mercy? He pointed toward the bed. Lie down, sleep, dream about redemption. Jason shook his head. No, there's a way out. There has to be. There was. The old man stood now, bones creaking, feet dragging like he'd forgotten how to walk. But you waited too long. Jason's hands trembled. I want to wake up. You did. This is the waking. The clock read 3:06 a.m. Again. The older Jason vanished. Not walked out, just blinked out like a light bulb failing. The room groaned. Jason collapsed onto the bed. He cried, not because he was scared, but because he understood. He wasn't the first Jason to wake up in room 306, and he wouldn't be the last. Jason lay on the bed, staring at the stained ceiling. The red LED of the alarm clock blinked. 3:06 a.m. It never changed, not even once. His body felt heavy, like the room was pressing down on him, like gravity itself had grown sick of him trying to escape. He tried to sit up, but he couldn't. His hands, his legs, lead. The bed sighed underneath him, like it too had grown tired of guests who thought they were special. A voice whispered, "You remember, but you don't change." That's the curse. He turned his head, barely. The mirror had returned on the wall across from the bed. In it, he wasn't lying down. He was standing, smiling. His reflection stepped forward inside the glass. The same age, same clothes, but calmer, paler, dead behind the eyes. Jason whispered, "Why are you smiling?" "Because you chose this," the reflection said, again. The mirror rippled. Jason felt the suction, as though something behind the glass wanted him back inside. The reflection leaned closer. "Every time you get close to leaving, you ask to forget. You ask. It's easier." Tears in her eyes. "You can still come back," she said softly, "but not like this." Jason reached for her hand. The motel screamed. The hallway collapsed inward. Room 306 shattered behind him like glass. Jason stood up.